Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 11. We are going to do things a little bit different this week compared to how we've been doing things before. If you paid attention to my announcement, you will have noticed that there is no digital discussion journal this week. The only content that you will need to engage with and post will be in the form of this discussion thread. So, what we're going to do this week is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to ask you to both think as a teacher and to also think as a student in this class. So, earlier in the semester, I asked you to think about what it means to write in different modes. We explored writing with visuals. Specifically, we talked about what multimodality means and how different modes have different communication affordances and constraints. A few weeks after that, I asked you to tell me a story in a mode or genre other than a traditional academic essay. Some of you wrote me letters, some wrote narratives, some poems, and I even got a few visuals and a couple of short films. This week, I've asked you to read some pieces that address multiliteracies and multi-genre writing in preparation for your final multi-genre project. I'd also like to take this opportunity to look a little closer at the differences between mode and genre, especially as they relate to the concept of multiliteracies. At its core, multiliteracies can be defined as the way that we make sense of multiple modes as a part of the reading and writing process. If we look at all of the ways that we access and disseminate information, we'll see that reading and writing are heavily influenced by modes other than print text. So, let's review what we mean by modes. It might be helpful to think about modes as the design elements of communication. Text, picture, color, sound, etc. Things like that. Things that are multimodal rely on several different design elements to convey their message. Think back to those infographics that I asked you to make in week 2. Remember this image? This was the image that I used to convey my interpretation of week 2's readings. Now, let's look at the different modes that I used. At first glance, it might just appear that I utilized text and image, which is true, but there are several other modes at play here. First, not only did I utilize text, but I utilized different fonts, text sizes, weights, as well as colors. Each of these design elements is used to further convey my message. Now, let's look at the images I used. Not only did I rely on an image of youth, to create identities for each of these youth, I utilized an icon in conjunction with the words to express who they are. These icons not only add to the message, but they represent how pictures are often utilized to convey socially constructed meanings. Think about it. In many instances, I could have left out the text and you still would have been able to understand the general idea. I also utilized color to draw connections between information. For example, the word inquiry is in gray in order to allude to the fact that the students are the ones that we hope to guide through inquiry. Finally, something that often goes unnoticed when thinking about mode is the layout or architecture of the piece. Look at how each of these modes is placed. The layout is important and also considered to be in a mode. Infographics like these and multimodal text in general are not a new concept by any means. Newspapers, magazines, and even textbooks rely on multiple modes to convey information. Street signs and advertisements do as well. What has changed is that we have a wider range of available modes and resources because of our changing and growing digital landscape. This has absolutely changed the ways that we engage with text in general. Now, another concept that you were asked to explore this week, maybe for the first time, is the idea of a multi-genre text. Many people tend to use the word multimodal and multi-genre interchangeably, when in fact they are very different. If we continue to think about modes as the different design elements used to design communication, genres are the forms that those communications take. They are the categories of communication. Let's think about this in terms of movies first. There are tons of different genres of movies: comedy, horror, drama, action, romance, documentary, animated. I could go on forever, and I'm sure that many of you can think of some I didn't even mention. Then there are also subgenres within that. Rom-com is an example of a subgenre. We may also be familiar with the idea of literary genre. Things like novels, plays, short stories, poetry, graphic novels, comic books, scientific fiction, nonfiction, autobiography. Again, I could go on forever. There are also many subgenres here too. Music is made up of different genres, as are dance and fine arts. What separates one genre from another are the conventions and rules of how information is conveyed. These are the identifying features or things that make it recognizable. Think about a horror film. How do you know it's a horror film? What about an autobiography or a short story? Every genre has a set of socially understood conventions that help to define it. We are able to recognize and understand genre because they take on very specific forms, some of which rely on other genres and modes as a part of their form. This is where it gets a little tricky. A magazine, a newspaper, and a web page all rely on both multiple modes and multiple genres to convey their purpose. Sometimes genres are even blended together to create new genres, like rock operas, performance art, and even graphic news. Beyond just influencing our understanding of literacy, the digital landscape has also created an entirely new space for genres to emerge as a part of communication across digital and social spaces. Social media posts, podcasts, YouTube videos, tweets, Reddit threads, emojis, Pinterest, and even news websites are just some of the different ways and genres that have their own forms in and across the digital landscape. And many of these also rely on multiple modes to convey their message. So what does this mean for you? Well, your final project for this class will take the form of a multi-genre project that utilizes 2 different genres to explore the role of writing in your classroom. In the announcement for this week, I asked you to review the details of this final project on pages 12 and 13 of the syllabus. If you have not done so yet, please do so before completing this week's assignment. Your challenge for this week has 2 parts. First, I'm going to ask you to think like a teacher and consider the role that a multi-genre assignment might have in your content area. How might you use this kind of assignment as a way for students to explore content through personalized writing? What are the affordances and what might be some of the challenges? Second, I will ask you to begin to think about your own learning and identify 3 different genres and or subgenres that you might be able to use as a part of your final project for this class and offer an analysis of them. You will define the genre, identify the characteristics that determine that genre, identify the typical modes used in the genre, and provide examples of the genre in real life. So what does it look like? For example, if an example of a horror film might be Pet Sematary or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Please make sure you give us more than just the names and titles. If there is a digital resource for us to maybe explore that genre a little bit more, please be sure to include that. It would be really, really great and really helpful. You are expected to respond to each other this week, and I would like you to consider not only how the multi-genre assignment might be used in your content area, but to also think about what you learned about the genres that your classmates are presenting. Now, here's the caveat. None of you can use horror films. If you have any questions about this assignment, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always available to give you a little more info if you need it. Thank you and have a great week, guys. I look forward to seeing what you come up with.